I still remember the knock on my dorm room door. It was one of those lazy Friday afternoons when the sun hits your desk just right, and you're halfway through convincing yourself to nap instead of study. I wasn't expecting anyone, which is probably why my heart skipped when I opened the door and saw him. My father. He was standing there wearing that awkward smile he always put on when he was about to ask for something. It had been years since I'd seen him. Years since he'd bothered to remember which city I lived in, let alone which university I attended. And yet, there he was, acting like we were the picture-perfect father and son. He told me how proud he was that I'd be graduating soon, how my mother missed me dearly, how we should all have dinner together, like old times. But then, there was that pause, that heavy silence right before the real reason surfaced. I could see it in his eyes. I could feel it. This wasn't about love. This was about the $1 million I'd inherited from Grandpa, and in that moment every memory came rushing back. The nights I spent alone, the birthdays they forgot, the way they left me behind when they built new families. I looked at him and thought, "You abandoned me when I was 12, and now you're here because you've run out of money." When I was 11, I thought my life was as normal as any other kid's. 2 parents, 1 home, the usual bickering over chores and grades. Nothing dramatic. That's why one quiet afternoon when they sat me down at the kitchen table, I thought it was to announce a trip or maybe surprise me with a new video game. Instead, they said they were getting divorced. No arguments, no slammed doors, no bitter court battles like the stories my friends told me about their parents. Just calm smiles and explanations that they had both found someone new. Mom would be moving in with her new boyfriend. Dad's girlfriend, a woman I'd never even met, would be moving into our home. I was told I'd spend 1 week at Dad's, 1 week at Mom's, and they made it sound like I'd just be changing bed sheets every 7 days. At the time, I didn't care about the promises they made. New vacations, the latest games, all the fun stuff to soften the blow. I just wanted them under the same roof. I wanted to walk into the kitchen and see both of them there, even if they were arguing over burnt toast. But the day Mom packed her things, I watched her leave with her boyfriend. And minutes later, I watched Dad's girlfriend unload her bags into my parents' bedroom like she owned the place. The family I knew didn't just split, it evaporated. That's when the slow, steady process of being pushed to the sidelines began, and I had no idea it was only the start. If you've ever been somewhere you weren't wanted, you know the feeling. The way the air gets heavier, the way conversations die the second you walk in. That's how it felt in both my parents' new homes. At Dad's, my stepmom's twin boys were almost my age, and from day one it was clear we were rivals, not brothers. They'd shoot me looks like I was trespassing, and somehow Dad always gave in to their complaints. Family outings turned into just the 4 of them, because the twins didn't want me there. Dad would promise, "Next time, son," but next time never came. At Mom's, it was worse. Her boyfriend didn't even try to hide his discomfort when I was around. They'd be all over each other, kissing in the kitchen while I tried to eat breakfast, making me sit outside on trips so they could have time alone. Within months, Mom was pregnant, and my place in her life shrank to a corner she barely noticed. So I started spending more time with my aunt, Dad's older sister. At first, it was just a night or two when things got too awkward, but before long, her place started to feel like home. She'd make me dinner, ask about my day, and actually listen to the answer. It took over 3 months for my parents to even realize I'd moved in with her. 3 months where Mom thought I was with Dad, and Dad thought I was with Mom. The truth? Neither of them had been paying attention. That's when I understood. I wasn't part of their new families. I was a leftover from the old one. Living with my aunt felt like stepping into a warm room after a winter spent shivering. She wasn't just my father's sister. She was my godmother, my guardian angel in disguise. Her house smelled of fresh flowers from the nursery she ran, mixed with the faint aroma of homemade bread she baked every Sunday. Every corner whispered care. Every word she spoke carried attention. She never treated me like a burden. When I came home from school, she'd ask about my day, sit me down for dinner, and actually wait for my answers instead of scrolling on her phone. Vacations weren't about showing off or taking selfies. They were about laughter, simple joy, and making me feel like I belonged. Even more, she taught me independence. She let me help in her plant nursery after school, take care of the household chores, and earn my own living. It wasn't forced labor. It was trust. Trust that I was capable, that I mattered. Meanwhile, my parents, well, they barely remembered my birthdays. They called only when prompted by her, or sometimes not at all. My graduation? I could have counted on one hand the number of times they even attempted to check in. My aunt was the one clapping the loudest in the audience, cheering me on when nobody else bothered to show up. Through her, I learned that family isn't just about shared blood or last names. Family is about presence, care, and consistency. And in that realization, I began to see my parents for what they truly were, distant figures, absent when it mattered most. It happened quietly, like a shadow creeping into my life. Grandpa passed away. My aunt and I were devastated. He wasn't just my grandfather, he was a pillar of our small, fragile family. He had always been present, a rare constant in a world that seemed to forget me. The funeral was bittersweet. My parents and uncles barely visited him during his final days, yet they all appeared at the lawyer's office the moment the will was to be read. It was almost theatrical. Grandpa's will, though, was a shock. Every acre of his 150-acre farm, the farmhouse, and $1 million in cash went to my aunt. Nothing for my parents, nothing for their new families. Most of the remaining money went to charity. Brutal? Yes. Fair? Absolutely. Grandpa had loved them, yet they had ignored him when he needed them most. And then came the phone call. My aunt, smiling through tears, told me, "This money is yours. Use it to chase your dreams." It wasn't just the wealth that mattered. It was the gesture, the validation, the knowledge that someone had seen me, truly cared for me, and believed in me when the world around me seemed to have forgotten I existed. Within days, news spread. And like vultures sensing opportunity, my parents resurfaced. Suddenly they were calling, visiting, texting. Every ounce of love they had conveniently buried for years had been unearthed by the promise of money. It was surreal, standing there with the keys to my future in my hands, watching the very people who abandoned me scramble to reclaim a connection they'd never nurtured. And that's when I realized they didn't want me back. They wanted the inheritance. A week later, my dad showed up at my dorm unannounced. He probably got the address from my aunt, who, by the way, had always shielded me from their chaos. I opened the door and felt the same mix of disbelief and irritation I'd felt as a child whenever they popped in without warning. He began praising me, telling me how proud he was of my achievements, how my graduation was such a big moment, how my mother missed me. At first I wanted to believe him, just for a second. But then I caught it, that flicker in his eyes, that subtle hesitation in his voice. This wasn't about pride, it wasn't about reconciliation, it was about the money. "Back off," I said. "The only family I have is my aunt. You abandoned me years ago. Don't pretend otherwise now." He stammered. He tried to convince me it wasn't about the inheritance. He insisted he was remorseful, that he just wanted to reconnect. I nodded, smiled politely, but inside I knew better. I had grown, I had learned, and I wasn't going to let old wounds be reopened for someone else's gain. Later, my mom left a voicemail, a carefully crafted message about how she expected to be invited to graduation and how she wanted to see me succeed. I listened, took a deep breath, and chose silence. I would not be a pawn in their performance. It was in that moment, standing alone in my dorm, thinking about all those birthdays missed, all the cold nights, all the moments of absence, that I realized the lesson Grandpa had always silently taught. Family is measured by care, not by blood. And my aunt had shown me what true family really meant. It didn't take long for the calls to escalate. First, it was my mother, pleading, or rather demanding, that I help pay for my half-sister's private school tuition. "Your sister needs you," she said. "It's your duty as a big brother." I laughed, though it was bitter, the kind of laugh that escapes when disbelief and anger collide. "Sister, where were you when I was sick? Where were you when I needed a parent?" I told her flat out, "I have plans for this money. I cannot spare a penny for anyone else." Then came the bank. Dad had defaulted on a mortgage and somehow they had my number. Panic hit me first, a wave of old fears I thought I had left behind. But after a quick consultation with a friend who knew the law, I realized I was under no obligation. Not legally, not morally, not anymore. When the recovery agent called aggressively, I stood my ground. "I am not responsible for this debt," I said calmly but firmly. "Contact the person who took the loan, not me." Hours later, Dad's wife, I refused to call her mom, screamed at me, furious that I hadn't helped him. I didn't respond, only reminded myself of the years I'd been ignored, abandoned, and overlooked. And when Dad himself called later, drunk and remorseful, I listened quietly. He begged, apologized, tried to tug at my emotions, but I had learned something invaluable. Forgiveness doesn't mean erasing lessons learned. I chose my peace over their manipulation. In that moment, I realized they had returned to my life only for one reason, and I wasn't going to let them take advantage of me again. With the inheritance secured and my independence solidified, I finally felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about knowing I had a family who genuinely cared, who had stood by me when my parents had vanished from my life. My aunt wasn't just a relative. She was my anchor, my constant, the person who had nurtured me when everyone else turned away. Meanwhile, my parents' attempts to reinsert themselves into my life fell flat. They showed up at my graduation, tried to charm their way into conversations, but I remained polite, distant, and unwavering. Their disappointment was palpable, the irony of missing years of my childhood only to be shut out from the rewards of my hard work wasn't lost on them. I also saw the power of boundaries and self-respect. Saying no didn't make me cruel. It made me wise. They had no right to my hard-earned inheritance, my dreams, or my peace of mind. And as I watched them grapple with the reality that I would not be manipulated, I realized the ultimate justice wasn't revenge. It was simply living my life fully, without them. That night, sitting with my aunt in the quiet of her house, watching the sun set over the countryside, I understood something profound. Family is not defined by blood, by divorce, or by money. Family is defined by love, presence, and consistency. And in that, I had everything I ever needed. For the first time in years, I felt truly free.